Good afternoon, and welcome to Day 3 of the 2021 ARPA-E Energy Innovation Summit. I hope you have been making the most of all the virtual summit has to offer. I want to thank all our speakers yesterday for being so generous with their time. I'm incredibly excited about today's speaker roster, so let's get to it. First up, ARPA-E is thrilled to welcome to the main stage Donnel Baird, CEO of BlocPower.
Hi, I'm Donnel Baird, the founder of BlocPower. We're a climate tech company that analyzes, finances, and installs decarbonization equipment, reducing energy costs and usage in local low-income buildings. So we're turning low-income buildings into Teslas by making them 100% all electric. We're taking the fossil fuels out of the building the same way that Tesla is taking fossil fuels out of the automobile. We have to turn buildings into Teslas. In order to convert whole cities to 100% electricity powered by wind, water, solar, sometimes nuclear, we know that we need to do this because 30% of American greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings. So we need to electrify everything. The cars, the buildings, the grid. But why is it so important that we do this? And how do we do it? So today I'll be talking quickly about 3 5-year-olds and then the BlocPower plan to create 100% all electric cities by turning buildings into Teslas. So I grew up in a low income building in Brooklyn. We didn't have a functioning heating system. It was an oil boiler. It didn't work. And so my family and all of our neighbors had to heat and cool our apartment using our oven. And every night we would turn the oven up as high as it could go. We'd open up the window. It'd be like, 30 degrees outside. But the oven would keep us warm and toasty, but we needed the window open to release all the carbon monoxide so that we weren't poisoned. And so we and all the other families in our building, and actually most of the families in our neighborhood, that's how we heat and cooled our building. And so early on, I was exposed to the intersection of energy, unequal access to clean energy, and the kind of health implications that come from that. So I always knew that we had to fix that. That was a problem. That's me as a 5-year-old. The second 5-year-old was a student at an early project that we worked on in the Bronx, in a school that also burned oil in the basement. The building pumped air pollution from that oil burning in the basement, burning oil for heat and for hot water. Air pollution would be emitted, particles would flow throughout the school and cause lots of asthma attacks. And so in New York and in the Bronx, in my building and in this school, an oil truck literally drives up, pumps oil into the boiler in the basement, then you burn that oil for hot water and for heat in the winter. But you have to burn it year round because you need hot water year round. So this causes massive smog and air pollution and also greenhouse gas emissions. And so the school, all the kids had chronic asthma. And so the school nurse had like 70 different Ziploc bags. She would like tape every 4 and 5-year-old kid's like name to their asthma inhaler in their Ziploc bag. So since they all had chronic asthma, whenever they had an asthma attack, she knew which inhaler went to which kid. So pretty serious problem. And one day there was unfortunately one 5-year-old whose name I won't share, but he had a massive asthma attack and he died. And so think about how difficult it is to go to school and go to class. One, in a building where your classmate just died and you're 5, but 2, in a building where you can't breathe. How can you learn? How can you study when you're constantly having asthma attacks and your classmates are dying and getting sick with you? So that's the second 5-year-old. We know that in communities across the country, that have been neglected, that the maintenance of the buildings has also been neglected. And so there's, whether it's in the Bronx or it's in Appalachia, we know that there's lead, there's mold, there's asbestos that needs to be removed before we can even begin to power that building with clean energy and 100% electricity. This is America. We can do better than that. The third 5-year-old is my son, Nash. By the time Nash is my age, there will be constant global pandemics due to the melting permafrost. There will be constant droughts, and large parts of America will be desert and uninhabitable. There will be climate wars as refugees cross borders to escape all the droughts. But Nash is named after one of the greatest freedom fighters who ever lived, Diane Nash. She fought for and won the right to vote for Black Americans. She sent a Greyhound bus full of Black riders into the segregated American South. Her colleagues, including future Congressman John Lewis, rode this bus into Alabama. The bus was firebombed by local racists, and all the passengers on the bus, white and black alike, were like mauled and beaten by a racist mob. So back in Tennessee, when Diane Nash heard the news, she signed her last will and testament, and her colleagues got on the very next bus into Alabama to go and face down the racists. Later on, when she was 8 months pregnant, she risked going to jail in order to lead a voting rights campaign in Alabama. And while there in Birmingham, when all the local adults were afraid of the local sheriff and police, Diane Nash worked with other leaders, her husband, James Bevel, to persuade 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds to do a freedom march. And even though all the adults were afraid to march, the children marched to earn the right to vote. And eventually they won. So Diane Nash was a champion, a social justice champion, and she was effective. She actually won. We know that we're going to need a massive victory of that scale to triumph over climate change. And in order to preserve a habitable future for my 5-year-old son and your kids and their kids. So as Americans, we know that we've achieved these kind of victories before. We've won world wars, we've put women and men on the moon, we've built up the highway infrastructure of the country, we even built up the infrastructure of Western Europe after World War II through the Marshall Plan. So we need to do that again, here and now. We need smarter, greener, healthier, all-electric buildings that are part of all electric cities. We're going to turn the buildings into Teslas by taking out the fossil fuels, just like Tesla does for cars, removing them from the engine, and now Ford is doing for trucks. Hope you saw the President Biden jump in that all-electric Ford 150. He was having a blast and looked awesome. Can't wait till they come out. So we want to make these buildings all electric, just like Tesla and Ford are doing the cars and trucks, and we want them to be powered by wind, water, solar, sometimes nuclear. And we need to do that. The only way we can do that is through creating a national new digital infrastructure for all American buildings. And when we talk about that, we're not just talking about smart buildings, like do your lights in your kitchen turn on automatically when you walk in. We're talking about like, does your house have debilitating mold or not? Is your house giving your kids asthma? And can it tell you if it is? Can your house kill COVID-19 when it floats in through the windows? Can your house stay warm for 1 week after the power goes out, as it just did in the city of Houston? Can the house power itself so we can get rid of antiquated power lines, which in California are burning down half the state every year due to all the forest fires and droughts that are caused by climate change? Most importantly, can each of the 100 million buildings across the country give us digital information and a roadmap on how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from that specific building? Each building has its own custom, unique set of equipment and set of needs and airflows and an individual thermodynamic model around how heating and cooling and clean air and polluted air move in and out of that building. That's all unique. We got to figure that out. on a unique basis for 100 million buildings. So we're going to need digital infrastructure to really scale this up. So we need that information from 100 million buildings, and it's going to require this new digital infrastructure for all buildings across America, with a special focus on financially underserved communities because they have extra lead, asbestos, mold, indoor air pollution that makes kids sick. So this new digital infrastructure will help us move all buildings to hydroelectric power and solar and nuclear and wind, maybe hydrogen. And so when we think about this new digital infrastructure to electrify buildings and electrify cities, at BlocPower, we think about at least 5 elements. The first is internet connectivity. We know that there's a digital divide, and we've learned about that together as a country through the pandemic. In low-income communities, the White House suggests that the way that we close this digital divide is through broadband infrastructure that's owned and managed by low-income communities. So low-income communities need to own the broadband. And we are very proud and very supportive that the White House has this plan, because it not only closes the digital divide and creates great jobs, but it will build wealth in poor Black, brown, and white communities. Second, as an element for digital infrastructure for buildings, we need low-cost sensors and smart, all-electric, fossil fuel-free energy systems that we can install in 100 million buildings. Mitsubishi and Dacon and Fujitsu have great ones. We want them to open factories in America so that we can create more jobs, but they need to report to the cloud so that we can do machine learning and do anomaly detection. We need open source middleware platform that connects all the buildings and all of the devices to the internet so that we can collect all the data and do machine learning. And we need a national community of developers to build up that middleware software platform. And it needs to be free. There are platforms, they are owned by private companies. We need them to be open source and free so that all buildings can access them. So FDR, during the Great Depression, paid people to plant trees. We need to have software developers writing code to connect smart, green, fossil fuel-free devices into this open source free middleware platform that any building in the country can access. So we need that community of software developers to make it robust. And we believe the way to incentivize our generation of millennials and Gen Z to participate in this and write this software code is through blockchain. Now, some of us may be a little skeptical when we look at blockchain and cryptocurrencies and all of the crazy price volatilities and the meme coins that are named after your pet or whatever. But the underlying blockchain technology is incredibly valuable. And everyone from IBM to Silicon Valley agrees on that. And so if given a true purpose and a true mission, like the generations of Americans before us who brought the country back from the brink of economic collapse, who fought off global authoritarianism, who rescued us from legal discrimination against women and African Americans through Jim Crow, we can provide a new mission of building up digital buildings infrastructure to millennials and Gen Z and incentivize them through blockchain to track and store all of the health, environmental, energy bill, and economic benefits of greening buildings. And so we want to incentivize this generation that's into cryptocurrency to build up free middleware software that connects buildings to the internet and helps us to analyze the buildings and figure out how to remove fossil fuels. So to that end, today at BlocPower, we're actually releasing a new blockchain. We're releasing a new blockchain protocol, almost like a green Bitcoin, that will reward and incentivize a community of global software developers to help us green American buildings. And you can learn more about that on our website. Last, as the fifth element, but certainly not least, we need a new tech-enabled construction workforce who combines software with construction management skills to use augmented reality and new augmented reality construction management platforms to efficiently design and install and maintain smart new all-electric devices. to provide basic internet connectivity in 127 million buildings that's going to be owned by low-income communities. And so soon we'll be announcing a new partnership with a national labor union to do just that. So the goal of all this remains to turn buildings into Teslas, or maybe Ford 150s if you prefer. And we're going to move whole cities from fossil fuels to 100% electricity. And how we're going to do that is we're going to have 4 to 6 American cities. We need you guys to commit to going 100% all electric in the next 5 years. A lot of cities are talking about doing it in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, but we need like 5 cities to do it in 5 years. All the buildings, all the cars. That's going to leave us with a 5-year or 4-year buffer to get the second cohort or second wave of cities to convert all of their cars and buildings to 100% renewable energy. And so we're going to turn these buildings into Teslas and turn these cities all electric. And so by creating the world's first all electric city in 5 years, that's going to kick off a huge wave of all electric cities. And so in the next few weeks, our company is going to announce our partnership with the first American city that's going to commit to going 100% fossil fuel free within 5 years. We're super excited about this announcement. But if you're listening today and you're in a city, we want you to call your mayor and ask them, hey, how come we can't go green and all electric in 5 years as well? So in doing this, we're going to reestablish America as the global leader in sustainability and innovation. We're going to harness the talent of an emerging generation of powerhouse millennials and powerhouse Gen Zers who really want to address climate change. And that's my generation. And our generation is going to save the planet. And we're going to do it with some digital green building infrastructure. Thank you. Pleasure to be here with you today.